First time I went to Helm's Deep, it occurred to me, I'm not an archaeologist, but I know them, and I do projects with them. And so because I was well connected, I talked to Jonathan and I said, well, I could probably bring in some experts in the field. I reached out to P. Willie, who reached out to Hugh Berriman, and I reached out to Shimmick, of course, because otherwise you get yelled at. And George was the first one I thought of. If you guys don't know George Crothers, he is the state archaeologist, I believe, for the state of Kentucky. Is that correct still?
I'm retired.
Oh, he's retired. How about UK?
No, I'm still there.
Professor
soon I'll be retired from there.
So he'll have time to do any project you want.
All right.
And so we brought George in. As you may know, George worked on the footprints at Wolf River Cave. He seemed the perfect person to bring to Helm's Deep. Well, all yours, George.
Thank you, Joe. When we first visited the cave with P. Willie and Hugh and myself, it's not that I don't have a lot of projects to work on, but I thought what I could contribute, with my co-authors, was some equipment, technology to do a better job of documenting the passages that have footprints. As you know, they're vulnerable. They can get obliterated. It's very hard to do any kind of statistical measurements and collecting data in the cave because it's cold and it's cramped, and you can damage them or destroy them by trying to reach out and do them. So we have a new what do you want to call it? A lab consortium at the University of Kentucky, which is a marriage between the School of Engineering, who created what they call a Deuce Lab, and the archaeologists and anthropologists in the program, because the engineers have instrumentation, a lot of knowledge on how to record and analyze material, and we have lots of questions. So that marriage is to bring some of the cutting edge equipment and instrumentation to bear on what we call heritage science questions. And so one of these is using three-dimensional technology, scanning technology, to record material, either things in the lab or archaeological sites that you can't actually bring into the lab, obviously. So what do I advance? Page down, that work?
You can actually try this one if you want. Hit that right one and see if it works. Okay. See if I can work. Left should take you back if you need.
Okay, let me go back. Hugo Centeno is one of my colleagues. He's a biological anthropologist, and he's interested in mainly does early humans, paleoanthropology, but he's part of this Deuce Lab, and these are two of his graduate students, and they know how to use these instruments. My job is just to tell them, kind of point and ask them if they can do that. So let's put Helm's Deep in context of other sites we know with footprints. And these are both surface sites and cave sites. And perhaps some of you have heard about White Sands National Park, made a big splash a couple years ago, where it's a lake plain out there that is now dried up, and it has gypsum deposits, and these early humans walked across this lake when it was probably a shallow water. Left footprints. These get buried, and they have to either excavate them or they get uncovered by natural processes. But once they're uncovered, they're going to be gone pretty quickly. It's very soft gypsum. So this is an example, one of those footprints. Now, I'm not trying to be critical here, but they have to excavate these things. So I've excavated a lot of things, and sometimes you excavate things to look like you want them to look like. I'm not saying there was not a footprint there. I'm just saying I don't know if it was that pretty when it was originally made. And then but the controversial part about White Sands is the dating of those deposits. They're still arguing this. I think they definitely are Pleistocene, but maybe 11 to 15,000 years old, not necessarily 23. But I'm not an expert in this, so I'm not going to get into that for you. Any site in California, this is also a lake, or a stream deposit. And of course, we go to the gold standard of footprint caves, footprint sites in the U.S. with over 274. These dates are just a amalgamation of all the dates. Not trying to parse out exactly when the date footprints were made, but sometime between that range. Third Main Cave is another early site with footprints. It's got a whole lot of range of sites. Unknown Cave, Kentucky is in Mammoth Cave National Park. This one's kind of cool, kind of important, because Unknown Cave is an artificial entrance. It's not clear how the Native Americans got into the cave, and at one time it was thought maybe they came from Salt's Cave. And if that's true, they made the first connection between all of the caves that eventually made the world's longest cave. It's now thought maybe there wasn't a natural entrance in Unknown Cave that's collapsed and opened up at different times. But it's neat to think that maybe they made the first connection. Of course, Salt's Cave, these are in lower Salt's Cave, and these are actually footprints in dust. So they're so fragile that you blew on them, they would go away. And of course, Helm's Deep Cave here, we have no idea what the total will be, but it could easily surpass Jaguar Cave. Some Fisher Ridge. This is actually a pit house and a cave and a floor of a pit. And of course, we got a few others. Mudcliff Cave I've thrown up here because the cool thing about that one is, you see the footprint down here? They're hard to see. I don't do very good with my handshakes. There's the heel. There's the arch. There's the toe. There's the ball. Yeah, kind of an arch. Here's the toe. The little toes, 1, 2, 3. Maybe a fourth toe there. So they smacked their foot into the wall, into the edge of the passage there, and then they drew a little. They used the heel and drew some lines off it to make it look like a turtle cliff, is what most people call it. Some legs, tail, maybe a head. But anyway, that one's kind of cool. So we do have a number of cave sites with footprints through the U.S. Most of them in the southeast because we have so many caves. Back to the gold standard of caves, Jaguar Cave, gold standard for footprints in caves. This is the technology of 1970s to early 80s. I don't know if anyone's ever used a plane table in an alidade. So there's the little plane table. It's a peep sight alidade. It doesn't have a scope. It's like a gun sight, peep sight. You use to aim at if you've ever used a alidade. They designed it for mapping coal mines. That's what they used it for. And so, if you ever used an alidade in a plane table, it's a lot of work to get that thing lined up, measure out to whatever you're mapping, and then draw. But the advantage of a plane table is you're going to draw exactly what you're mapping, so while you're looking at it. So these two footprints here are the photographs, and so there's no mistaking that those are footprints, human footprints. You can see the toes very well. This is that stalagmite column here that's in the drawing right here. And what's kind of cool is, here's the trackway where most people are walking. Somebody broke off, walked over, looked at it, and then walked back into the thing. Or maybe they pushed it over, I don't know. Maybe they're the ones that knocked it down. Now, I borrowed this slide from another article on is the people from who fossil prints. They call these impressions more, because prints indicate more like you step in ink and then step on a piece of paper. So they're foot impressions. But there's a whole journal dedicated to this kind of stuff. But I borrowed this because it illustrates very well all of the attributes, all of the variables that go into whether footprints are even left and whether we can recover them. Everything from the formation, what the substrate, what you're stepping on, what the track maker is doing, their behavior, as well as their extraordinary behavior. I'm not sure that. And I added footwear on there because we know, at least in Jaguar Cave, some people were wearing, we call them slippers, or kind of like moccasins, but they're made out of plant material. And then you have all of these taphonomic processes that go on that can disturb the prints. Now they're dealing with prints that get buried, kind of like they were out at White Sands, and then have to be excavated. But these ones I've highlighted in yellow probably apply to places like Helm's. The desiccation, so the drying, the cracking, patina that forms on the surface. This could have also displace of growth or evaporite. So all of those gypsum and selenite crystals that are forming in the soil, that gypsiferous soil sediment that's wet, and when it dries, those crystals will form. And those things can come and go. They don't always just grow and stay there. Biological disturbances. Of course, our worst one is going to be vertebrate. Nice way of saying people stepping on the footprints, but vertebrate trampling. So future, at the time and in the future, they can be destroyed by trampling. Insect bioturbation could be another one, because the cave beetles that like to drill down into dry sediments, they can do a lot of disturbance. But anyway, so there's a lot from making a footprint to getting all the way down here to actually being able to get the fossil footprints. So now let's get to Helm's Deep. This is only in one trip that we scanned footprints, and we concentrated on these three areas. The initial footprints found up here in the BA passage, Hobbit Hall, which we'll concentrate on a little bit more, and then the ones also that Joe mentioned over here in BE 9 to 12. And we know, I know there's a lot more passages out there with impressions. I don't know if we have a total running list of where they all are, but
I don't.
The mappers and cavers probably.
These are the people
have
that
a better
ask.
idea than that. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so the equipment that we had access to that we could use in the cave, what's the Artec 3D is the company. They make one called the Space Spider, and then the Leo. I don't know where they came up with those names, but here's a little comparison of what they do. They're both handheld. Targets are not required, so you don't need to, when you have a lot of overlapping images, you don't need targets to line them up. It lines it up through the software of kind of the geotextile, the geosurface. It matches it up. This is the accuracy of the resolution. The working distance is important. You can see the Space Spider is more accurate, but you have to be 20 to 30 centimeters from whatever you're scanning, versus the Leo, which you can be 35 to 120 centimeters, so about 3 feet, 4 feet. This one also requires a computer, so you need to take in a laptop and have, I think it's wireless to the laptop, but because it's recording gigabytes of data. But this one does not. It has an internal solid state drive, but it's a little heavier. So this is the one we use, the Leo. That's the Leo. It did occur to me though that now looking back at the scan, we probably should have put targets everywhere there was a survey station, so we could then geo-reference it to the maps that you guys are drawing. Better, get it overlaid. So I think next time if we do that, we would have targets where the survey stations are. Okay, so the methods, field acquisition, that's the fun part. And then there's the post-processing. So in this Artec Studio software that's designed with these instruments, first you have to do is there's a lot of unwanted data. You can clip and cut and get rid of kind of the messy stuff around the edges. then you have to align the individual frames into a seamless 3D model. That the software takes care of that, but it takes hours and hours for it to churn through the data to do that. And then from that, you can then create photorealistic 3D models with photo texturizing. There's handheld, on your phone, you've got handheld, you've got apps you can do this on, which do really great jobs. So Jim does some really great stuff with that. Just the thing you can do on your phone, on your iPhone. The advantage of these instruments is we're going to be talking about 100 feet of passageway that we scan. But those 3D models are great for visualization. And then you can also export these into other software. I'm thinking about using SolidWorks, which is a CAD type program. I need to investigate that a little bit more because this creates the texture, the skins and the textures, what do they call it, the point cloud. And then, but to do the measuring and stuff, you want probably like a CAD type program. But then you can also put layers and outline each of the footprints. So here's Hobbit Hall. We're going to concentrate on it today. And if you look across the surface, got any basic geology, sediment doesn't deposit like that. So just that undulating surface tells you that something's disturbed it. A lot of different things can disturb it, but in this case, we know, and it's not a very high passage, you can't always walk, so there might be footprints, but people are also probably stoop walking or hands and knees crawling or duck walking or all kinds of different things through there. So this surface tells us that something's going on. So now, if you remember the footprints in Jaguar Cave, those were quite clear. Oops, sorry. Trying to push the. So there's a footprint there. Can you see it? They're not always. They're not. They don't jump out at you like they do in Jaguar Cave. I have to get down and look at it for a second. So there's the heel. There's got a nice arch. There's the ball, and then you can see the big toe. You don't really see these. Maybe some little bit between the toes there. So it takes the light the right way, the angles. There's, it takes sometimes a while to see these, but it's kind of like once you start seeing one and know what to look for, then they start popping out at you.
How long does it take to make a scan?
It's actually really quick. The scanning part's
Like seconds, not
yeah,
minutes.
yeah.
Okay.
You can't move it too fast, and you have to keep it the right distance from the thing, and it'll warn you if you're getting too far away and stuff. And you can see it. I don't know if you noticed that screen on the back. You can see what you're scanning at the same time. So here's the fused data from Hobbit Hall in a 10 millimeter resolution. So that's about about 100 feet of passage. And again, you can see it's capturing the undulating relief at this resolution here we're looking at zoomed out. But if your eyes are key in on it right here, you can see right here there seems like a series of footprints. Mm-hmm. So let's zoom in on that spot right there. And if we zoom in, you can see them quite clearly. The trouble is, those are boot prints.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Like blueprint.
Yeah. So that's okay. I mean, this is the side that you're supposed to walk on. But those are going to stay on because they're fresh and they haven't been aging and drying for 3,000 some odd years. So those are the ones that look like boot prints. Some of them get wander off, it looks like. But at the first, you don't see this thing, you don't know they're there. You don't realize maybe you walked into the passage. But I know this is pretty far. You got the screens back there, but if you look closely, you can start to see other footprints. You see that one? I think there's one there. In fact, that looks like a left foot, right foot. So there's a track. maybe another one here. If you keep looking, you start to see, your eye can make you see things, everywhere.
Right, your imagination runs wild.
Sorry.
I think I hit the.
So here in yellow, I think those are prehistoric footprints. And this is just not going systematically, and again, we're zoomed out quite a bit, and we're in the 10 millimeter zone. But you can begin to see the footprints are there. It's capturing them. So here I'll zoom into the passage again. The red square is zoomed in. Now this is 1 millimeter resolution. Doesn't have a texture footprint. Can you see the footprint there? It's kind of, can you see it? Is it left or right?
Looks like a right. I think the heel's to the upper right-hand side.
Who said right? Who says left? I think it's a right. Let me, yeah, I have to get down here to look at it.
Show where it is.
All right, so, there's the heel. There's the arch. There's the ball. There's a large toe, and then maybe 3 toes, maybe the 4th toe there. You got to think, and if you're walking through that sticky mud, your foot is accumulating mud, so your footprints aren't always going to be.
Do we know if they have is that barefoot footprint or?
That one's probably barefoot because
Yeah, well, I wasn't sure if, if they were
Yeah.
something real thin, like a, animal hide or something.
Yeah, we know from the dry caves like Mammoth and Salts and Big Bone that they did wear, we call it, they had footwear, we call them slippers because they're made out of plant fibers. And
I feel like all the ones that I've seen have looked very barefoot, but.
yeah, most of them can, but even the slippers, they're so thin that your toes could press through them. But there were prints in Jaguar Cave, we felt like they probably had some kind of footwear.
Well, we found while being out in Mirkwood that if you don't wear your knee pads and you just have your yoga pants or your cave pants on, that your body heat kind of helps that mud peel off better actually. So
yeah,
maybe it was something they went
yeah.
took it off to keep the mud from sticking to their stuff.
So at 1 millimeter resolution, you can see the right foot, but you can also see quite a few other partial footprints in that, just in that little section. So what I'm trying to say here, it's going to take someone with a lot of patience and time to systematically go through and try to pick those things out.
Are y'all planning a machine learning algorithm?
That would be an ideal
Well,
thing.
especially to cut out all of our, our movements have a really clean edge.
Yeah.
Hell, you could even ask each of us what our shoe size is and be like,
Okay, now you did that.
It's, yeah. Rachel mud boot size 7 or
Yeah.
something. Tractor supply boots size 16.
Yeah, so ultimately that would be the best way to go, is someone who's do some machine learning or AI to at least narrow it down. I mean, they do that. There's algorithms for picking out sinkholes and things like that.
So you should probably go to the ball field.
Perfect.
So what's next then? Analyzing the fused 3D models to individual prints. So we've got the 1 millimeter resolution focus fuse scans. You can then, with this software, you can then also take and look at them in cross section to get, well, does it also conform to what you would expect? Because when you're looking at it at a 3D or plan view, you may not, sometimes hard to tell what's an impression and what's actually a high point. But you can then look at these in cross section to see do they conform to the, and that can also help you do measurements of stature and weight by how deep it's impressed. And then, as we just mentioned, some kind of AI or machine learning methods to pattern recognition. Import these 3D scans into a CAD type program for further analysis. to do for the complete or nearly complete footprint, so we can get individual statistics on how many individuals were there. For example, like at Jaguar Cave, the 274 footprints are from 9 individuals. Is what we estimated. And then you can create layers of the individual trackways, and you can begin to do stuff with, and Hugh knows a lot more about this, that the tracking, the data to do with tracking. So you can get speed, stride length, you can do a number of other ideas on that. And of course, analyzing the number of individuals or group size in these things. So future work is going to be scanning other passages of track. I think we could use that high resolution space spider to then go in Jaguar Cave when after we mapped the footprints and Louise Robbins was the physical anthropologist that did that work. We went in and took plaster casts or wax casts of each individual. So we had a 3D cast of that individual. You could, I think, with the Space Spider, you could do a very high end resolution and create 3D models of each of the individual. So you have that record footprint. And so, as you mentioned before, this is really a call for a good master's student or even an energetic senior honors student. I don't know that it's necessarily a PhD level project. Could be. We have the first data we collected. We learned from that. I think we could reform and do a better job of collecting the next data in some ways. But this is, I'll be retired soon, and maybe I'll have some time to work on it, but I have to learn all of the software, and you know, at my age, I'm not as good at learning software as I used to be. You know, I'm a DOS guy from 1980.
DOS.
Yeah, I'm a slapper guy.
Yeah.
Punch cards.
So that's in the Deuce Lab, we've got the computing, the high-powered computing with software, computers that can process this stuff. James is the one who's done most of the fusing and putting these things together, and I think I missed that. Go back. I think I did. So there was 463 files, individual files that had to be fused together just to do Hobbit Hall, and it's 86.5 gigabytes of data. So he gets that all in there, and then the thing he starts it running, and it crunches, I don't know, 24 hours, because it has to overlay each of those, and it figures out.
Pieces together.
Yeah, pieces them together, so you don't need targets in there, but you do need that computing power. And then someone logs onto the computer and stops his thing running, and he's got to start over again.
When you get the building.
Yeah. So you have to sign in when you want to use the computer, because people do it remotely.
Oh.
They get it going, and it's running in the background, but if somebody else logs into the computer while it's running, it'll shut it down, and then it's got to start over again. Okay, that's where we are. That's still a work in progress. Yes?
Have you seen any evidence of handprints or knee prints in crawlways, or should we assume they were just scooping walking passages?
They are the scoopers.
Yeah.
There's not that much walking.
I'm not seeing, it's almost everywhere. You almost have, you're either stoop walking or duck walking.
And they're probably shorter in height.
Yeah, they probably tended to be a little bit shorter in height. We do think, I don't know that we haven't analyzed the foot sizes yet to say maybe distribution of age. But like in Jaguar Cave, there were some petite individuals that were either young adolescents or smaller people in general. But, yes.
Related to that question, I only went into the cave for the first time in like early 2023, so it's possible all the exploration had made very, very deep knee tracks right at the beginning, where even the small Tom Thumb couldn't walk in that passage. You got to fall hands and knees.
Yeah.
But it seemed to me like I was following knee tracks that had been done by many, many, many individuals.
Yeah.
And I can't help but wonder if the cavers didn't just have the knees naturally go crawlways like that, but it seems to me like, you know, the knee tracks are, even with all the papers on these survey kits, pretty darn deep.
Yeah, yeah, and I didn't completely answer your question yet. I did think there were things that were probably knees. I had not seen anything that looked like hands, but I haven't looked at everything. And you also, you know, sometimes you can walk like a gorilla or a chimpanzee on your knuckles.
Knuckle walk, yeah. Right, Jay.
Right.
A software idea is that instead of rewriting something similar to sinkhole identification, you can use that sinkhole identification algorithm. You could take this and import it into
Just
the
like
GIS
a,
software.
yeah, like a smaller
So you
scale.
have a little DA.
Because it doesn't really care what the scale is.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's just, say this is the landscape.
Yeah, I know, I haven't messed with the kind of sinkhole algorithms for GIS, but I know it'll keep drawing the boundary as long as there's depression, and so you can get some really weird shapes of things. So I wonder how it would do that. If it would start link, you know, like this one over prints this one, would it link that one to that one? But it would at least draw edges.
If you find that master student, then you can move me in because I've done the sinkhole identification.
Yeah, okay.
It's really useful.
Thank you, George. Thank you very much.